Okay, so now that we listened to the story, The Scarecrow, it's time to draw our scarecrow. Now, before we get started, we need to make sure our paper is going the right way. So we want to make sure our paper is going tall. Remember, this is long. We want it tall, okay? Now, before we start drawing, I'm going to teach you some new words today. Now, I always tell you to turn your paper tall or long, but there's actually different words to tell us which way to turn our paper. This way, when it's going long, is what we call a landscape, okay? A landscape means you're pretty much looking at a picture of the land, but not always. Landscape goes long. Now, when it's tall, this is what we call portrait, okay? Now, a portrait is a picture of a person. So if we look at our picture of our scarecrow, this is like a portrait, right? Just like when we have our class pictures done here at school, they're taking our portrait and the pictures are tall, okay? Portrait is tall, landscape is long. So today, since we're making a scarecrow portrait, our pictures are going to be going tall or portrait mode. Okay, so make sure your paper is nice and tall, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we are going to draw this line right here. This curved line, that's the bottom of his hat and the top of his head. So it's not quite in the middle of my picture, it's up just a little bit from the middle. And it's pretty big. It goes almost all the way across my paper, okay? Because I want my portrait to be really big and take up my whole sheet of paper, okay? So I'm going to start just above the middle, and I'm going to make a curved rainbow line. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to draw our scarecrow's face. Now, if you look at our scarecrow's face, it looks like the letter U, okay? So I'm going to come in a little bit on this line. I don't want to start here on the edge. See how I left a little bit of that edge over here? I'm going to come just a little bit, and I'm going to make the letter U. And when I come back up to the other edge, see how I left a little bit overlapping here? And I made a letter U right in the middle of my curved line here, right in the middle of my paper. Okay, now we need to add the brim of his hat. Now let's look, okay? So here's the first line we drew. And then here's the edge of his face. So we're going to come down a little bit on the edge of his face, and then we're going to draw a curved line that goes around, up and over, and then comes and hooks back down under this line to the edge of his face. So watch how I draw this line, and then you're going to try it, okay? So I'm going to come down a little bit on his face, and I'm going to curve around and up all the way over, and then I'm going to hook it back to his face. Okay, so watch me. I'm going to draw. I'm going to come out and around, curve it over, and then I hook it back. Now you try. Okay, good job. Now we need to finish the top of his hat. So what I'm going to do is here, see where his face is? I'm going to kind of come almost right up from his head, and I'm going to draw two lines that are leaning in towards each other, but they're not going to meet in a triangle. They're just kind of leaning in towards each other, okay? So I'm going to come up, and that's what we call a diagonal line. Diagonal lines are slanted. Vertical lines are straight up and down. Diagonals slant. So then I'm going to come up and I'm going to draw another one about the same size that slants in the other way. And then I'm going to connect the two with a curved rainbow line. Just a little one. Barely curved, just to make the top of his hat. Okay, so now we've got his hat and his head. Now we need to finish his shirt. Then we can go back and add in some cool details for his face. So, to do his shirt, I'm going to start right here under the middle of his face, and I'm going to make the top of a triangle. Upside down V, top of a triangle. So this is a diagonal line and a diagonal line. So right now it looks like he's got a big head with two itty bitty legs. Kind of looks funny right now, but that's just because we're not done yet. Okay, so take your finger and put it on this line. Okay, put it on this line because this is the one we're working on. So I'm going to come over here to the edge of his face and I'm going to draw another diagonal line exactly like this one. Okay, so we're not worried about this one right now. We're looking at these two. So I drew these two, and then I'm going to connect them with a line right here. And that's one side of his collar. Okay, now I'm going to ignore this side, and I'm just looking at this line. Okay, so I'm looking at this line, and I'm going to come over a little bit. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to draw another line that looks just like it. Okay, so now I've got these two lines over here. Okay, and then I connect these two with a straight line. And now we've got the collar of his shirt. Okay, now we need to add his shoulders. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to start here at the corner of this collar, and we'll make a little curved line over to the edge. Now, did I come down to the bottom of my paper? Nope, I went over to the edge. Okay, so I've still got a lot of room here for his shirt. I just went straight over to the edge. Then I go over to this corner, and we'll do the same thing. A little curved line over to the edge of the paper. Don't come down to the very bottom. You're just going to the edge. Now we're going to give him a couple buttons. So I'm going to draw two circles right below his collar for his buttons. Okay, now we need to go back and give our Scarecrow a face. He needs a face. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to give him a smile. Now, are we going to put his smile up here? No. Are we going to put his smile right here? No. We're going to put his smile down here at the bottom. So, give your Scarecrow a smile. And then we're going to add two circles for his cheeks. See the two red circles for the cheeks? Circle over here on the left and a circle over here on the right. Two circles. Now, a scarecrow has these little lines on his mouth, and those are stitches because you have to sew his mouth on. This is normally like a piece of like burlap sack, and so you would just sew a mouth to make him look like a real person. So we're just going to add some lines along his smile to make them look like stitches. And now our scarecrow has a smile. Okay, now in between his cheeks, he needs a nose. And what shape is his nose? It's a triangle. So I'm going to start right above his mouth, and I'm going to draw a short little horizontal line. Horizontal lines go left, right. And then I'm going to add 2 diagonal lines above it for a triangle, like an upside down V. And now he's got a triangle nose. And we're almost done drawing, and then we can start coloring. The last thing we need to add are his 2 eyes. And what shapes are these? That's right, they're triangles. So I'm going to start by drawing 2 horizontal lines. Remember, horizontal lines go left to right. And I'm going to do 2 upside down V's on my horizontal lines to finish my triangles. And then I need to add a little circle in the middle. And now our scarecrow has some eyes. But we're not done yet. We have one more thing to do. One more thing. We need to add the patch on his hat. Okay? So what I'm going to do is this shape is a rectangle. It's a rectangle. But it's kind of crooked. It's not going straight. It's kind of crooked. So I'm going to draw a crooked rectangle. And again, this little patch has been sewn on, so we have to add our stitches lines. Now, if you look, we've got 1, 2, 3 stitches on the long side. 1, 2, 3. 3 stitches on the long side. On the short side of the rectangle, there's only 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay? So I'm going to do 2 on the short and 3 on the long. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And now he's got a patch on his hat. Awesome. So now we are finished drawing our scarecrow. So we can put our pencils away. And now it's time to get out our crayons and markers. So the first thing we're going to get is our yellow marker. Yellow marker. Now, what we're going to do with our yellow marker is we are going to add the straw that's coming out of his hat and from under his collar. Okay? So I'm going to take my yellow marker and I'm going to make some lines and make it look like there is straw coming out of his hat and his collar. You can make some coming out here at the edges, so it looks like there's a lot coming out. You can add more lines than me. We'll go back and add some because it just looks better when there's more and they're going in all directions. Makes it look a little, but that's okay. We want them to look a little messy. Okay, so once you've added some lines for the straw coming out from his collar and the straw coming out from under his hat, you're going to take your marker and snap that cap, and you're going to put yellow up, and then we are going to start with red. Let's start with red today because there's not a lot that's red. So red is going to be the patch on his hat. So I'm going to outline my rectangle. And I'm also going to outline my stitches. Now remember, we're not coloring in with a marker. We're just outlining, going over our pencil lines. So his patch is red, and so are his cheeks. So I'm going to outline these circles, trace around my lines with my red, and that's all that's red. So then I can snap that cap, put my red marker up, get my red crayon, and I'm going to color in the circles of his cheeks. And now remember, we color lightly, we color neatly, we stay in the lines, and we fill in the whole shape so there's no white spots. So once I've done his two cheeks and the patch on his hat, I can put my red crayon up. And let's move on to orange. Let's do orange next. So find your orange marker. Now the only things that are orange are two eyes, nose. So I'm going to outline my triangles. Outline my triangles, because there's 3 of them, 2 eyes and a nose that are triangles. And once I've outlined them, I take my marker and snap that cap. Put my orange crayon up, or my orange marker up, and get out my orange crayon. Sorry, I got a little confused there. And I'm going to color in my nose. Now when I color in my eyes, be careful to color in that center. We're going to make that black here in a minute. But we're just going to color around that center circle. Color lightly, color neatly, stay in the lines, fill in the whole shape. And now his eyes and nose are finished. And we're ready to move on to our next color. And our next color is going to be black. So put up your orange crayon and get out your black marker. Okay, first thing we're going to do is, since our eyes just have that little dot, we're just going to color that in with our marker because it's little. Now, if things are little, we can color them in with a marker, but we don't want to color like his whole hat because then we would use all the ink in our marker and our marker would dry out. So we only color in really little itty bitty things with a marker. Everything else we just trace around the edges. So I've already drawn mine with a black Sharpie, but I'm still going to use my black marker to outline because you can see how I'm just darkening my line, and I'm going to go around all the parts of his hat, the top. I'm going to go around the brim, and I'm going to do that first line that we drew, that first row line. So I outlined his entire hat, the top, the brim, and that first rainbow line we drew. And his buttons are also black. So I'm going to trace around the circles of his buttons. Now my buttons are pretty big, so I'm not going to color them in, right? I'll color those in with a crayon. When I'm done, I snap that cap, put my black marker up, get a black crayon, and I'm going to start with his buttons. Color lightly, color neatly, stay in the lines, and fill in the whole shape. So his buttons are colored in, and now I'm going to start working on his hat. Now, I colored over one of my yellow lines. Is that okay? Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to color lightly, color neatly, stay in the lines, and fill in the whole shape. Don't want to leave any white spots. I want the whole thing colored in. Got to color his whole hat. Take your time. We are not in a hurry. I'll color around these little red lines for my stitches. I don't color over those because I want to be able to see them. If I color over them, then you won't be able to see them. So I'm going to color around them. So I got to go slow when I color around little things like that. Color slow around these. Then we'll finish coloring my hat. And we'll go back and fill in where I see some white spots, because I want it completely colored in, looking good. Okay, once I'm done, I'm going to put my black crayon up. I'm going to give you guys just a few more seconds to finish before we move on to our next color. Okay, next color we're going to get is our brown. We're going to use brown. Now his face is going to be brown, because remember we said it was like a burlap sack, and burlap is kind of like a tannish brown color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace around the U of his face with my brown marker. So trace around the U of his face. And then I'm also going to trace his smile and the stitches. The stitches on his mouth. And once I've traced those, I can take my marker and snap that cap. Put my brown marker up. Find my brown crayon. And again, I need to color neatly, stay in the lines, and fill up the whole shape. Now I definitely want to color lightly, especially up here, because I still want to be able to see my yellow lines for the hay or the straw that's coming out of his hat. So I'm going to color really, really lightly. Because I want to be able to see those lines. And then I got to color around his eyes. Be careful, don't color in his eyes. We want to leave those orange. I got to color around his cheeks. So his face, I got to be really careful. There's a lot of shapes I got to color around. But that's okay. I can take my time, because we are not in a hurry. We've got plenty of time to finish our pictures today. Finish coloring in his face. And once I'm done with his face, I can take my brown crayon and put it back in my bag, and I'm going to give you guys a few more seconds to finish up his face, and then we are going to move on to his shirt. Okay, now his shirt is going to be green. So let's find our green marker. And we're going to trace around his collar. And you go right over those yellow lines. It's fine. And then I'm going to trace his shoulders. And that's all I have to trace green. And then I can take my marker and snap that cap. Put my green marker up. Find my green crayon, and I'm going to move my marker bag over here so it's not in my way. And now start coloring. Now again, color lightly so we can see those yellow lines of the straw. So color lightly, color neatly, stay in the lines, and fill up the whole shape. And then once I've done his collar, then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start coloring in his shirt. This is going to take me a little bit because this is one of the biggest parts of my picture, is his shirt. Now I'm going to turn my paper sideways because sometimes it's easier to color like this. So if you need to turn your paper like I did, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to keep it perfectly straight up and down to finish coloring. Sometimes it's easier to color from side to side than it is up and down. It's just easier on your hand, and your hand doesn't get tired as quickly. So always move your picture around to make it easier to color. I will turn it this way so I can color along the bottom. So don't be scared to move your picture around so you can get it colored or looking just the way you want it. Even if you need to flip it to draw something, you can turn your paper to draw something too. That's okay. However it's easiest for you to make your art, it's going to be right for you. So you may do it differently than me. You may do it differently than the person sitting near you. And that's okay. Okay, now that I am finished with my green crayon, I can put that up. If you're not finished, that's okay. Take your time. But if you are, then you can get your blue crayon out and you can color in the sky. Now again, turn your paper, but remember you want to color lightly, especially over here by his collar, because you still want to be able to see those yellow lines coming out for the hay or the straw from his collar. And I'm just going to color in all around my scarecrow and give me a nice blue sky. Now if you're still working on your scarecrow, you take your time and finish up your scarecrow. I'll move my bag so you can see the example a little bit better. And you're just going to finish up your scarecrow. Now if you have time for the sky, that's wonderful. But if you don't have time for the sky, don't worry about it. Maybe you have time later today, or when you take it home, you've got some crayons at home and you can color the sky at home. But I want your scarecrows to be colored. That's the most important thing. Okay, now I'm going to flip my picture upside down so it's easier to color. Don't be afraid to move your pictures. Don't be afraid to change the way your paper's going to make it easier to color. Keeps your hand from getting tired and you can color longer. Remember, color lightly, color neatly, stay in the lines, and fill up the whole shape. Make sure there's no white spots. Okay, flip my Scarecrow back around because I am finished. Now you guys might not be finished, and that's okay. Take your time and make them look really awesome and cool. When you're done, make sure you put all your crayons and markers back in your bags so I can come get those. And that's about all the time we've got for today. So I hope you guys had fun, and until next time.